So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about marketing for growth and analytics. Analytics is, in simple terms, nothing more than managing the profitability of a customer throughout their life cycle. So in the banking or financial services space, you typically spend money to acquire a customer, you then onboard them, and there are all kinds of 60 to 100 day onboarding plans depending on the product or segment. You then do your best to maximize the share of wallet, the upselling, the cross-selling, and at some point you're probably in a situation where you then need to manage the back end of that customer life cycle in terms of retention management. Now, when you look at a customer at different stages of their life cycle, obviously it's about, in most cases, the right message, proposition, product, service, etc. for the right product at the right time, delivered through the right channels. We all know about that. So the challenge is not so much in this day and age about the data. The systems are in place now to provide a wide range and bandwidth of data. The modelling capability, of course, is not necessarily the issue, and putting the offer together is not necessarily a big challenge. The challenge often comes in the execution. So you've got the modelling, you've got the offer, and then you've got the execution. And this is where you really need to have a number of building blocks to make the analytics program successful. Number one, you have to have a clear roadmap. So if you think about, let's take retail banking as an example. As I said, you acquire a customer, you onboard them, and the idea, of course, behind onboarding is making sure that that customer is fully aware of the best way in which they can maximize their relationship with the bank. You cross and upsell to them, and then you look at retention management, worst case scenario. Now, within that customer life cycle, you've got different products playing out across the matrix as well. So first 0 to 60 days, you've got your credit cards, then you have a personal loan that follows, savings, deposits, etc., and you've obviously got different communications going on with regards to how the customer can best bank with the organisation using an omni-channel approach, etc. So it's important to have that roadmap in place. You then, within that roadmap, have to identify some quick wins. So a business is always going to have issues or opportunities or requirements, but understanding where the biggest impact can take place, along with the ease of implementation, with some kind of a P&L or balance sheet impact, is very important. So you typically start your campaigns in that space. So let's say, for example, in the banking space, you acquire customers and you're acquiring them, but somehow you're not quite maximizing your share of wallet. So you might have a number of campaigns that follow up the acquisition. The first one might be a simple onboarding campaign where you're making the customer aware of the different channels that they can use to bank, the online banking, the telephone banking, etc. You're letting them know about the full suite of products, and you're following up very quickly with a credit card offer around not just the card, but obviously merchant offers as well to get some spend stimulation going. So, aligned to the roadmap and the quick wins, there really is a need for stakeholder management. When you're talking about an analytics program, it involves so many different layers of the organisation. You need your project champion. So again, coming back to the retail example, obviously your general manager of retail needs to be on board, your CFO, your COO, or at least the person leading the IT integration needs to be on board. And then you need project owners. So if your first campaign, let's say, relates to credit cards or loans, you need the head of cards and the head of loans on board. But I think most importantly in this, you need your front line on board. You need the individuals who are leading different channels to be on board. So if you have an analytics campaign, you typically, by nature of analytics, would use direct marketing or direct to customer media. It's not about mass media, it's about targeted laser precision media. So your SMS, your EDM, your outbound calls, social media, etc. That means that those guys on the front line need to be on board. For example, if you have a campaign where you sent out an SMS or an EDM and you back it up with an outbound call, every person making that outbound call in the call centre needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet. It's important they have the same script, they're recording data in the same way, etc. One of the other things is getting the sales buy-in. You see, when I used to start analytics, or when I first ran an analytics program a long time ago, the issue, as I said, was not the modelling, the offer, and launching a campaign. It was really ensuring that you had the sales guys behind you. And I'll give you an example without mentioning any particular bank or organisation. It was regards to loans campaign. So we had targeted customers, inviting them really to apply for a car loan. So the campaign was launched. When we examined the data, we saw very little uplift in car loans. What we did see is an uplift in loans overall. What was actually happening when the customer received the communication, they were going into the branch, the frontline sales team were actually incentivized to maximise the loan amount rather than a car loan. So the customer would walk in and say, I received an SMS inviting me to apply for a car loan to buy car XYZ. The sales guy would say to them, well, you know what, instead of a car loan, why don't we give you a much bigger loan by which you can actually still purchase a car, but you'll have some money left over to do something else. So in that case, that loan was not being recorded as a car loan. So when we actually did the analysis to look at the uplift in car loans, we found that it was almost negligible. But what we did find upon further investigation was that total loans uplift was increasing. The point here is that you have to bring the sales guys along with you. You see, salespeople, by virtue of who they are, they have targets, they're responsible for the execution. They want to feel like you're not really stepping or treading on their turf or taking credit for what they're achieving. So it's very important that you bring them along on the journey, that you make them understand that ultimately they will be the ones getting the credit for any analytics campaign, that you're not there to steal the glory for them. And that's the final point. That's why it's very important to have what they call control cells. It's back to Science 101 essentially. What it means is that in the example, let's say, of sending out the communication to a segment of customers asking them to apply for a loan, let's say, you always keep a control cell. So for argument's sake, if you send the communication to 90 customers, you might keep 10 customers back who do not receive the communication. Now, the reason you do that is eventually when you measure the success of the campaign, you want to identify that the actions you took were responsible for the uplift rather than it just being ordinary growth that comes about through seasonality or efforts in the market or the sales effort itself. So it's very important that you measure the uplift in the test cell, i.e. the individuals that you are targeting, versus the control cell, i.e. the individuals who do not receive the communication. This allows you to, again, going back to the stakeholder management, to come back and actually report on the success of different campaigns and categorically identify the fact that the actions you took resulted in some kind of business uplift. Once you've done that, you then have the permission to move forward with further campaigns.